Okay, students, so we're coming back to do the checkpoint now. And if you haven't already done the checkpoint, press pause on this video and do checkpoint number 1, 2, and 3 first before you watch the rest of this video. If you're coming back after having worked them, then here, let's go over 1. So here's your first quadratic equation, x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0. So in this example, a is 1, b is -4, and c is 3. And here I'm writing down the quadratic formula again, so you can see where we're putting that in. All right, so let's put this in now. So we need the opposite of b. Well, if b is -4, what's the opposite of b? 4, right? Plus or minus square root of b squared, so that's -4 squared minus 4a. A is 1 and c is 3, all over 2 times a, and a is 1. So there it is. I've plugged everything in. All right, so we got to remember PEMDAS, the order of operations, as we're working on this. So the next thing we're going to do, we just bring down the 4 because we're going to do what's underneath the radical first, and we're going to do the exponents first, right? So -4 squared is 16, and I have to do this multiplication first before I combine it with anything. So this is going to end up being a minus, but I have to remember that this minus sign is giving this 4 a negative. And I'm multiplying -4 times 1 times 3, and that's going to give me a -12. And then 2 times 1, obviously, this is all going to be over 2. All right, so we keep going. Next step, 4 plus or minus square root of 16 minus 12. Well, that's the square root of 4 all over 2. And then, of course, you know what the square root of 4 is. That's 2. And now we're going to do our computation here at the end. We're going to say 4. We're going to do the plus first. 4 plus 2, that's 6, divided by 2 is then going to be 3. And then we're going to do the second computation, which is the minus now. So 4 minus 2, all divided by 2, so it's 2 divided by 2, right, is equal to 1. All right, so I think I see the most errors made in this part, where students might feel, sometimes they'll write this down as 16 and they want to subtract that 4 first before they do the multiplication. But remember, multiplication comes ahead of addition and subtraction. All right, so let's go on to number 2. All right, so number 2 is 2x squared plus x minus 10 equals 0. Again, I'm identifying a, b, and c from my quadratic equation. I don't really expect you to write the formula down every single time, but I'm just writing it here just so you have a good frame of reference for right now, since this is so new. All right, so opposite of b. Well, if b is 1, what's opposite of b? -1. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's 1 squared, minus 4 times a is 2, c is -10, all over 2a, and a is 2. So there it is. I put all the numbers in, and now we just start crunching them. So we get -1 plus or minus the square root. 1 squared is 1. And then this right here, this is -4 times 2. That's -8 times -10. So that ends up being a plus 80 all over 4. And then, of course, that ends up being the square root of 81. So next step then is, and that's, of course, 9. So I'm going to end up with plus and minus 9 here when I split this out. So I get -1 plus the square root of 81, so that's 9, all over 4. And so that ends up being 8 divided by 4. So I end up with x equal to 2. And then in the second calculation, where I have to do the minus, it's -1 minus 9. So that's -10 all over 4. So I end up with a -5/2. I'm going to reduce that fraction. Okay, and then the last one is this. It's -x squared plus 3x plus 4 equals 0. So a is -1, b is 3, and c is 4. So when I fill in the quadratic formula, the opposite of b is 3, so that's -3, plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times -1, which is a, times 4, which is c, all over 2a, which is times -1. So I end up with -3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 16, all over -2. And then I'm going to end up with -3 plus or minus the square root of 25 over -2. And of course, the square root of 25, what's that? That's 5. So now I'm down to the the last bit of the calculation is negative 3 plus or minus 5 all over negative 2. So we'll do the addition first. We get negative 3 plus 5, which is 2, positive 2, divided by negative 2, so that my solution is negative 1. And then I'm going to do the minus next. So it's negative 3 minus 5, which is negative 8, all over negative 2. So negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. And that's the checkpoint.